In the small town of Cascade Pines, nestled deep within the forests of Montana, two lifelong buddies, Sarah Patterson and Riley Miller, both 17 years old, hatched a plan one summer morning. It was July 23rd, 1995, and their destination was Crystal Lake, a serene oasis surrounded by towering pines. Sarah's mother agreed to drop them off at the lake for a day of fishing and relaxation. But as dusk settled in, and the time for their pickup arrived, the friends were nowhere to be found. The mystery that unraveled in the following days was nothing short of astonishing. The following morning, far from the familiar woods of Cascade Pines, one of the two friends emerged on a desolate highway, more than 1,000 miles away. The authorities were baffled by what they heard from him, a tale that defied logic and reason. This is his account of the events that transpired after he was discovered on that highway. I can't wrap my head around where I am right now, and to be honest, the events Riley and I went through still seem surreal. It all started when we arrived at Crystal Lake around 7 a.m. yesterday. Normally we're early birds, but I had the toughest time waking up that morning. Oh, how I wish I had just slept in. Stepping out of the car and looking at the lake, its surface was as smooth as glass. Riley and I exchanged glances, and I remember saying, "Looks like a perfect day for fishing." Riley grinned and replied, "You bet it is." Crystal Lake had been our sanctuary for countless fishing trips. We had our favorite spot, a cove where the bass were always biting. I can still picture Sarah's mom driving away after dropping us off. The plan was for her to pick us up sometime in the evening, a flexible arrangement given we had brought ample provisions for the day. We set up at our usual spot and cast our lines. Hours went by and our catches were modest at best. That's when Riley suggested, "Hey, maybe we should explore different areas of the lake. Who knows, maybe the fish are congregating elsewhere today." I agreed, gathering my gear as we moved along the shore. Every 15 to 20 feet, we'd halt, cast our lines, and if luck eluded us after a number of tries, we'd move on. Our lakeside journey continued, leading us along the edge of Crystal Lake. This lake was expansive, bordered on one side by dense woods and foliage that stretched into endless forest. It was in that direction that we spotted something unusual. Riley turned to me and remarked, "Have you ever seen an old camper trailer like that here? It's strange. We've been coming here forever, and that thing has never been parked by the lake." As we edged closer, a sense of unease crept over us. Riley pointed out, "Look, there aren't any tire tracks from a trailer or truck leading here, and those trees, they'd make it impossible for anything that size to be brought through." His perplexed expression mirrored my own, indicating that we both sensed something amiss. "And what he said next left to satisfy our curiosity," murmured Sarah. "I don't know, Sarah. I've got a feeling it's best we stick to fishing." "That thing gives me the creeps," I responded. "Come on, don't be a spoil sport. A quick look won't hurt, and if it's locked, we'll get right back to fishing," she urged. "All right, but let's keep it swift," I conceded. Our steps carried us cautiously toward the mysterious trailer. We were perhaps 20 yards away, the thick foliage scratching us, and the mosquitoes buzzing around us were insistent on making their presence known. Approaching within a few yards, Sarah glanced back at me, saying, "I'm going to check if the door's open." I remained still, watching as she inched closer, her hand outstretched towards the door handle. It was then that we heard a sudden commotion from within, a sound like something leaping down, followed by hurried movement toward the door. Startled, we both jumped back simultaneously. Wheeling around, we sprinted away in the opposite direction. Over the rush of adrenaline in my ears, I could hear the creak of the trailer's door opening and the rapid approach of something, or someone, behind us. Sarah veered to my left and shouted something, but her words were lost in the pounding of my heart. I ran as if my life depended on it. Branches snapped against my face, and leaves whipped across my vision, stinging my eyes. My vision blurred with tears, but I kept moving forward, convinced that the undergrowth would eventually clear. However, it seemed like the forest had no end, and I was plunging deeper into its embrace, moving farther from the safety of the lakey. After what felt like an eternity, I sought refuge behind a massive tree, gasping for air. The moment I stopped, something struck me violently from behind. I hit the ground, and then there was nothing but darkness. When awareness returned, I found myself in a dim, confined space. The scent of dust permeated the air. I attempted to move, only to discover my hands and feet were bound. The space was so confined that movement was severely restricted. It was sweltering inside, sweat trickling down my face. I shouted, but the sound barely echoed, falling short. As I lay there in the gloom, unsettling thoughts flooded my mind. Why was I here in this confining darkness? Who or what had struck me and restrained me in this manner? The answers eluded me as I grappled with the unknown. My thoughts wandered, consumed by worry for Steve's well-being. I choked back tears, desperately hoping that he was safe. Steve had been my closest friend since time immemorial, and the uncertainty gnawed at me. Suddenly, an unexpected sensation shook my surroundings. It felt like the confined space I was in motion. It struck me that I might be inside a trailer near the lake. A low hum began to permeate the air, growing in volume with each passing moment. Puzzlement surged within me. How could we be moving? My mind raced as I recalled the trailer's position, wedged without room to exit, with no visible vehicles nearby. The humming persisted, a steady companion for what felt like an eternity. Abruptly, it ceased, as if the world outside had stilled alongside it. I had nearly drifted into slumber when a sudden jolt snapped me awake. Dread and anxiety surged as I was left grappling with the unknown. Minutes of unsettling quiet slipped by before a startling sound pierced the silence, the scuffling of movement, followed by a resonating thud against a hard surface. A wave of horror crashed over me as my thoughts turned to Steve. Was he bound like me in this darkness, or was that noise his doing? My struggles resumed, my efforts to free myself growing more desperate. Progress seemed elusive, the constricted space amplifying my mounting panic. Next, a firm grip on my hair seized my attention, yanking me from the confined space and dragging me along the floor. The abrupt halt left me prone, my hands secured behind my back. My vision to adjust. When I finally looked up, an anguished scream tore from my throat. The sight before me was incomprehensible. On the wall of the trailer hung Steve's lifeless body, headless. His severed head rested beneath, his expression etched with agony. My eyes welled with tears, and I shut them, praying it was a nightmare. Moments later, I dared to reopen my eyes, bracing for the grisly scene. Yet instead of Steve's remains, a man loomed over me. His presence exuded an indescribable intensity, his piercing gaze etching itself into my memory. I vividly remember the stark whiteness of his eyes against the darkness surrounding them. He wore black trousers and was barefoot, his skin coated in obsidian paint. His hair was sleek, drawn back from his forehead. Adorning his chest was a symbol painted in the same black hue, a downward-facing cross with the name Malthus inscribed beneath it, trailing down his stomach as though etched with his own fingers. He remained silent, effortlessly hoisting me from the ground and depositing me onto a table beside Steve's lifeless form. I bit my lip to stifle a scream as I found myself mere inches from Steve's decapitated head. The man circled behind me, a cacophony of movement signaling his search for something. After what felt like an eternity, he returned, standing over me, his presence casting an inescapable shadow. In one hand, he held a sickle, a weapon that sent a shiver down my spine. His words, though incomprehensible, hung heavily in the air as he raised both arms aloft. In that moment, the realization struck me. This was the end. I shut my eyes, bracing myself for the same fate that had befallen Steve, unable to escape the horrid destiny that awaited. As I lay there, awaiting the inevitable, another sound pierced the tense silence, a voice, guttural and foreign, resonating in a language foreign to my ears. My eyes fluttered open, driven by curiosity, only to be met with an unthinkable sight. Behind the painted man, another figure materialized, half man, half beast, shrouded in a coat of black hair. It stood upright on two legs. Its crimson eyes bore into me, its face beyond description, etching itself into my nightmares. My gaze returned to the painted man, who nodded in response to the creature's words. Without warning, the entity transformed into a massive black bird, vanishing into thin air. The painted man lowered his arms, pivoted, and walked toward the direction he had emerged from, where he had retrieved the sickle. In the wake of his departure, I remained sprawled on the floor, grappling with what had transpired. Unexpectedly, the painted man reappeared, yanking me by the shoulder, forcing me off the table. The impact against the floor sent pain coursing through me. Eyes squeezed shut, I braced for the inevitable end, only for his actions to surprise me. He released me from my restraints, methodically slicing through the bindings that had held me captive. My limbs free, I lay sprawled, contemplating my next move. In a sudden motion, he seized me by the hair, propelling me toward the door. With a forceful gesture, he swung the door open, continuing to haul me outside. Upon impact with the ground, I swiftly turned to face him. He stood, his gaze fixed on me, uttering words that chilled me to the bone. "You are not the one sought by the master," I heard him say. My voice trembled as I demanded answers. "Who are you? Why are you doing this?" His gaze bore into me, his reply cutting through the air. "I am the hand of the dark deity. I am the dark messiah. I am the harbinger of vengeance." He pivoted, retreating into the trailer, the door closing behind him. With haste, I scrambled to my feet, propelling myself away from the scene. Despite the numbness that gripped my feet, fear provided the adrenaline I needed to stagger away. Glancing back, I could hardly believe my eyes. The trailer had vanished, as if it had never been. The surrounding woods seemed to envelop me in safety, even as I stumbled onward. Every rustle in the underbrush jolted me, my heart racing at imagined threats. Eventually, the trailer's presence was far behind me, replaced by the embrace of the forest, shrouded in a silence that concealed the unfamiliar terrain. A vast desert stretching in all directions. It struck me with a sense of isolation, a desolation that was foreign to me. I'd only seen deserts in pictures and on screens, and now I stood amidst their stark reality. My steps carried me through the unforgiving landscape, each footfall a testament to the distance I traversed aimlessly. Eventually, exhaustion gripped me, and I lay down in the middle of a highway, surrendering to my weariness. It wasn't long before the hum of an approaching car reached my ears. The vehicle's headlights illuminated the road, and soon enough, a compassionate stranger pulled over and offered me a ride. Grief weighed heavily on my heart, a painful reminder of the friend I had lost. Steve's absence was a void that felt insurmountable. Chase Kelly was discovered more than 1,000 miles away from where he had last been seen. It was along Highway 95 in Bullhead City, Arizona, that a couple found him, lying in the middle of the road, trembling in shock. His words, when they finally came, startled them. "Which state am I in?" he had asked. News of Jace's reappearance spread quickly, and his parents rushed to his side. The tale he shared was as extraordinary as it was surreal. Unbelievable as it seemed, there was no alternative but to believe him. The impossibility of his journey left no room for doubt. Jace's presence in Arizona defied all logical explanations. There were no records indicating that either he or Steve had taken a flight, a scenario that would have been the only other explanation for their distance covered in such a short time. Steve's disappearance prompted a massive search effort, yet he remained elusive. Jace's testimony led authorities to retrace his steps, guiding them to the spot where he claimed to have been released by the enigmatic painted man. Marks on the ground bore witness to his escape, his footprints juxtaposed with the inexplicable imprints of 4 trailer tires. Bafflingly, there were no tracks leading to or from the site, as if the tire marks had appeared from thin air. Time passed, and Steve was ultimately declared deceased. Jace, haunted by the horrors he had experienced, retreated from public life, evading interviews and conversations about his ordeal. Whispers circulated that he embarked on a quest to locate the mysterious green and white camping trailer, a mission that allegedly consumed him to this day. For more chilling tales of horror, remember to subscribe.